Hello, this is Pastor Rick, and I want to welcome you to the Sunday Forum, this special table talk edition where we're excited to introduce our new senior pastor here at Emmanuel Lutheran Church, David Lillejord. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Before we enter into this interview, I just have to ask you about the weather. We have a delightful 82 degrees here today with a slight wind. It's beautiful. How are things in Minnesota?
Well, thanks for asking the pointed question. It's 32 degrees here. We had a sudden, unexpected snow event, as we call it here. There's about an inch of snow. However, people of hope who live in Minnesota, on Thursday, it's supposed to be 50. I tried to get a tea time. The tea sheet was full. So I do have a tea time at noon on Friday because it's going to be 45 and the snow will be gone. So I know people are wondering how desperate we are, but it could be a record. December 7th, I could be golfing.
Okay, you brought up golf. Do you have a handicap? Do you discuss it publicly?
I have a handicap of 4, 1 wife and 3 kids, because if I didn't have my 3 kids and 1 wife, I'd be a better golfer. But that's my story.
All right. So, David, we're excited about having you down here in January. We'll talk a little bit more about transitions a little bit later on. But I think many of our people would be interested to know where you're doing ministry now. The congregation St. Andrew. We do have some people here who know Minnesota well and know your congregation, but where have you been doing ministry over the last many years?
So the last 12 years, St. Andrew Lutheran Church in Eden Prairie. It is the former place where the Minnesota Vikings had their training facility, and now they moved from here to go to Egan, which is where my last congregation is. I guess wherever I go, they go to my last place. But
that's good to know.
Eden Prairie is a western suburb. St. Andrew is a large church of 7,000 people. And so there's been a lot to do in the last 12 years. As senior pastor, just kind of oversee the many foci that we have. Obviously a church that worships, but we have an early learning and our preschool. We also own our own Bible camp that's used only by us. And then we have a new ministry, progressive kind of looking into the future, Church Anew, which is another part of our ministry. So there's a lot of things going on at the same time.
It's a big place. It's a very active place. How does St. Andrew compare to some of your past congregations? So tell us a little bit about your career and what other congregations you've served.
Okay. Well, I grew up very quickly as a small town preacher's son. My father was always in southeastern Minnesota. He grew up in Winnipeg and he was a farmer and they went to seminary. And so he was a kind of an agricultural pastor. I had the small town parsonage thing, and I didn't make a deal signed in a document with God, but I didn't really want to go rural just because I grew up there. And I ended up being assigned to the Minneapolis Area Synod, my first call, in a place called Farmington. It was a church of 1,500 people, so that was bigger than most towns I ever lived in. And I was there for 3 years and met a wonderful young lady by the name of Joy, who was Catholic and lived in this small town her entire life. And one day, basically, it was kind of like we realized we were dating in a fishbowl. So I went to Shoreview, North Oaks, which is on the other side of St. Paul. And that was kind of a Herculean jump for me. I went from a church in a small town, even though it was 1,500, to a church of 4,500. And then I was an associate pastor under Gary Anderson, who became my mentor. And in those 5 years, I think was really defining where I learned what it was to be a regenerative pastor, to take a big church and make it in motion. And I was there for 5 years and then became a senior pastor 8 years into my ministry in Egan, as I said, the now home of the Minnesota Vikings training camp. And that was a church of 1,200. So the numbers are important only because when you have a church of those sizes, you just have mechanisms that are different, but it's just full of people that all people need to be served and ministered. But the little congregations I grew up in taught me the importance of individual ministry. And then I went into a bigger place and just tried to make sure that everyone feels important.
You mentioned you were a PK. I share that tradition with you. I was a PK too. How were you influenced by your father as far as now you look back at how you do ministry, some of the things you've just said? Um, what type of impact did he have on your understanding, even maybe your calling into ministry?
Yeah, great question, Rick. I think for myself, I remember Dr. Mark Colden, who was I think he was a systematic professor at Luther, and I remember one time halfway through, he called me aside and he said, "I think it's kind of ridiculous how often you quote your father."
Hmm.
And I said, with all due respect, he taught me how to be a pastor. And I think it's like a farm kid who grows up on the farm. Your mom and dad are going to be your greatest teachers, and you can go to the U of M Ag School. But I grew up in a parsonage. I grew up with my mom at the organ bench. I grew up with my
Hmm.
dad in the pulpit. And so I was marinated like a big fat piece of chicken. And so I sat and listened to council meetings. I mean, I was obviously destined to be weird, but I just knew church. And so everything I was taught at Luther Seminary, which is a great place, I also had seen in action from my father, albeit just from his vantage point. But it would be akin to Little House on the Prairie, and there's a doc, in Walnut Grove, and there's a kid who watches his mom and dad be a doctor or a nurse, and that's what you know. It's cradling. So
Yeah.
for me, I was born for this. I think I really was. I was just placed in the right place of being loved by my family, but also ministry and what to do in a church is almost instinctual for me. Obviously, don't have it down perfect, but it's so that defined my call. I can tell the people later when we have more time. I ended up in Hollywood. I took a little bit of a gap time and ended up uh, possibly doing that kind of stuff. I was going to go to the University of Michigan to get a doctorate in psychology. So I had other interests, but the call to the ministry is sneaky and persistent, and it keeps on knocking. And sooner or later, I opened up the door. I didn't waste an awful lot of time. I just took a little bit of a 10-month tour. And then I ended up in the ministry, and it fits like a glove.
So let's turn now to your family. You already mentioned your Italian wife, Joy, and I think you mentioned when you were down here at Emmanuel interviewing that a lot of the Italian relatives live very close to you. That's sort of the tradition, right?
Yes, it was, as a Norwegian, and we were close, and like Oldie tells Lena, I love you. And if I ever change my mind, I'll let you know.
Mhm.
And that's the stoic. I married into an Italian family, and they just do family so well and so close. It's not cloistered, but it is very close. And my wife's one of five kids, and we are 25 miles away from her parents, and we live the farthest of any of the kids. So we're going to break that now and go to Florida. So, it's not tense, but it is. I've learned an awful lot in my 28 years of marriage of what it is to be embedded as a family. It was phenomenal for me to learn how to rely and how to really be communicative with your family.
Tell us about your kids.
Oh, pride and joy. I just want to, Joy and I have been married 28 years, and I'll kick my coverage. People tell me that all the time. Greatest blessing is joy. And then, so Jacob is 23. He graduated from St. Olaf College. He played hockey there. And so that was fun to do that. He was a finance major. He's now in his, I think, seventh month of being an investment banker at Piper Sandler, which used to be Piper Jaffray. Some of the people in the room who know Minneapolis know that, but things get bought and sold. So he's keeping himself very busy. It's an important job at a young age, but he's doing great. Rachel is a senior at St. Olaf, and she has a job waiting for her Target Corp down at corporate headquarters when she gets done. So St. Olaf is 2 for 2 in getting our kids jobs, which last time I checked is the one of the main purposes of higher education.
There you go.
And our son Matthew broke the chain. He's is this place called Gustavus, which is a great Lutheran school, but instead of turning left to go to Northfield, we turn right and go to St. Peter. he's a very accomplished swimmer, and he chose Gustavus because it's a Lutheran school, but also they're very accomplished at swimming, and he likes to win, I guess. So that's why he's there.
So I think you left out a very important member of your family, right? Do you have a dog?
Yes, Ruby, Ruby. And the thing is, if people end up seeing her, she is white, but she was actually as red as Ruby's slippers in The Wizard of Oz. And she was an only child. She was only pup. And we went back. She was red as those slippers in the movie. And then we went to go get her. And then in the next couple of weeks, she turned all white. So it's not a family name, but she's 10 years old. And I think the story is that when we got her home, my wife Joy thought, well, she might go to the bathroom as little pups will do. Will you please hold her? Which I did for about a couple of months. And I think it's that imprinting thing.
Yeah.
She's still there whenever possible, and she's okay with it. And I'm really okay with it as well.
Uh, we have a lot of dog lovers here, so I hope we look forward to meeting the family and the dog. So
Yep.
just so you
Yep.
know, uh, maybe we should close this initial interview with your own hopes for the transition. Of course, we pray for a smooth transition. It's an exciting time, but there's a lot to do, as you know, a lot of goodbyes and a lot of hellos. But what could you share with our people here at Emmanuel about your hopes and expectations, not just for your ministry, but let's say for the first year, first 6 months?
Yes. Well, the last worship service of St. Andrew was just this past Sunday. And so, as you know, Rick, when you leave a place, it's kind of layered and it's successive approximations, and it's not like you just deplane. It's here, there and everywhere, and so thousands of people to say goodbye to, and it's we do this because we love people, and you don't break up, but you do say goodbye and in measured ways. And so that has taken place. So that's been helpful. And then now my mind can turn to Emmanuel. And I guess I'd say in a kind of a truncated way, I want to give a thanks to Jerry and to all the call committee and to everyone that I met. That is the entry point for a pastor. Is he or she meets them and hopes they're endemic, they're a good representation of the people. I think for my hope now that I've done this for 32 years, I want to be in a place, I've wanted to be in places, and I have been in places that want to follow the call to be a minister, all of us, that we treat one another kindly, that I serve in a place where it's a soft place to land. Living in society, living with politics, living with the divisions that we have, I believe the church has been called a hospital for sinners, but it's also was called the first community center. And I think if your church doesn't emanate peace, you have to have tough conversations about important decisions. But I want to be in a place, and I always try to foster a place where when you go to church, you feel better than when you enter. That's true at a funeral, that's true at worship, that's true in meetings, that's true all around. So when I arrive at Emmanuel, I'm going to come not saying, "Hey, I have all the answers." I'm going to say, "What is your story? Where have you been? How can I fit into that? How can I have some wisdom, but also how can I leverage my skills, but how can other skills of other people be leveraged in a different way?" I love what I do, and the places that I've gone into. One of my colleagues, Pastor Peters, said this is the second time he's worked with me, and what he said on Sunday is, I knew that I wanted to join a staff led by Pastor Lillejord because I know that when I join that, we're going to go places. Now, he didn't say in the right place, and it's not always in the right place. But I played sports, and I played really hard, and I always sweat. And if you're not dirty when you get done playing football, then why in the world did you even go on the field? So when I come there, I first of all want to get to know people, because I might be the one that comes and holds your hand when you have a bad diagnosis, or you're going to hold my hand if I have a bad diagnosis of cancer. We're going to walk through this life together for how many years that God gives you and me and us together. but I love the church. I was born and raised in the church, and now I'm a professional Christian. But to me, a well-run church, a church that doesn't fight about unnecessary things and goes and just makes a difference in the world. And you're able to say, I belong to Emmanuel, and that's what feeds my faith. And I'm a disciple of Jesus. And I think you should come because it's a great place. Baby, that's why I draw breath. Other than my kids, that's what I do. And I'm mature. I'm not old. I got more gas in the tank, but I'm going to come there. And at least if nothing else, you know I'm going to be there. It's not going to fix all things, but Rick and I and the other staff will get to know one another. There's nothing better than when you have a church that's humming, that is on a plan, and they don't always stick to it because things happen, but you're always making progress. So that's me in a nutshell. That what I hope to do. It's nothing sudden, but you're going to know I'm there. Uh, I hope.
Um, David, we lift you up in prayer for you and Joy during these transitions, and there'll be multiple transitions, I understand, over the next 6 months. You start in January, right? I think
January 2nd. Yep. I show up the day after.
January 7th will be your first sermon here.
Yeah,
Just
I guess,
alerting you.
yeah, I found that out right now. Yep.
Yeah,
I haven't done the preaching schedule yet, but I think that is because I should probably do what I'm most natural doing, and I watch other people do other things, and so I'll do what comes instinctually. So
good, good. I'll tell you about my 6 month vacation plan starting in January, a little later.
oh, well, that's
No,
ironic.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Actually, I was going to offer you a 7 month, so you cut yourself off
I should have waited.
yeah.
We want to pray for those transitions. We want to pray for Joy, for Ruby, for your family, both sides, as
Yep.
everybody transitions into having you here in Florida. We pray for a couple weeks, it sounds like, of not downtime. That's certainly not true, but you can enjoy the holidays and Christmas probably more, not having some of the same responsibilities. So that's wonderful to hear.
It'll be the first time in 32 years that I have not preached on Christmas. So, but I also would be remiss to thank you, Rick, because I know you have done a Herculean task. And I want to also thank the call committee and the congregation for being patient. Patience, I know, is a virtue. It's one I really do not have. But the entire congregation has been really wonderful. I just had to try to leave a really good place, a really big place, and how I leave is also how I enter. So I just want to thank the people of Emmanuel who have been very, very, very patient and kind. I know it's been a long journey, but sometimes these things, it's not from point A to point B. Sometimes you have to go to C, D, and E. So thanks to you.
So again, we pray for your transition, and we look forward to having you down here on January the 2nd. And I want to, again, thank you for joining us on this special Table Talk edition of the Sunday Forum. David, blessings to you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.